Alright, and welcome to the nonfiction book report for The Last Battle, when US and German soldiers joined forces in the waning hours of World War II in Europe, by Stephen Harding. The idea behind the nonfiction book report is for me to give my opinion on the book that I have read, and sometimes to discuss my views on the subjects that the book presents. In this case, that would not be the situation because I do not have the qualifications to discuss the US forces involvement in the World War II, as I do not have enough background information. I have not researched enough background information. So let's get right into the book. I usually begin any discussion of the books, specifically of the nonfiction books, with the author, because depending on the qualifications of the author, the level of scrutiny that I will apply to the book will be higher, and if the author is more qualified to write such a book, and if the author is more of a journalist and does not have as much qualification, then my level of scrutiny will be lower. In the case of Stephen Harding, he's a journalist that specialized, seems to be his whole life on reporting on military and military history. Therefore, he's pretty good at, he should be pretty good at what he does. His written books that I saw so far all focus on World War II, and they specifically focus on Pacific theater. The Last Battle is the only book that I saw that focuses on the European theater of action in the World War II. So let's talk about the book, and specifically let's talk about the title of the book, because it is a bit of a misnomer. The book calls itself The Last Battle, and I guess the idea is set up that this was the last battle of World War II. However, the Battle for Castle Ytter that is described in the book ended on May 7th, 1945, while the liberation of Prague concluded on May 9th of 1945. Therefore, it seems to be a bit of a disconnect in terms of the title of the book. Maybe this was the last battle for the American troops? I'm not sure. Actually, an interesting fact for everybody is the reason the Soviet Union celebrated the victory in World War II on May 9th was the fact that the Prague was liberated on the May 9th, and this is the same reason why all the former Soviet republics continue to celebrate the victory day on May 9th. Now, the second part about the German soldiers joining the US soldiers and together them fighting against the SS troops. And also is a bit of a misnomer, because the German soldiers that were fighting alongside the Americans were not already anymore at that point the members of the German military. They're more of a resistance fighters. They kind of deserted the German military and joined the Austrian resistance. So they did wear the German uniforms because that was what they had to wear, but at the same time they were not exactly the German soldiers. So this one is a bit of more, I guess you can say that they were German soldiers, but it's a bit of a nitpicking there. So, what was the Battle of the Castle Ytter? The Castle Ytter was a part of the Dachau concentration camp complex, but it wasn't inside Dachau itself. It was actually a castle located in Austrian section of the Alpine Mountains. It was called the Tyrol section, and it was converted into a prison for the French VIPs. The French VIPs were mostly the members of the pre-war French government, and there were also two members of the government of the Vichy France who were pretty much arrested for what was believed to be the resistance activities, and the book actually talks about exactly why they were arrested. There were a few other people who were arrested and put in the castle of Ytter, but not because of what their activities were, but more because of who they were, such as they were relatives of the prominent French Free French generals. Now, the battle has occurred because the SS forces around in the area were under orders to kill the French VIPs, and the Americans and the local Austrian resistance members were fighting to protect them. So that's pretty much the whole battle that occurred in a nutshell. The book itself is a very easy to read book. Some people said they found it to be a bit of a dry book. For me, it was not the case. I do most of my reading on the public transit, and for me, I found it to be easy to read, easy to follow the author's train of thought, and pretty methodical of a read. So therefore, for me, the book was fine in its layout and its narrative. Overall, the book also provides biographies of all the main persons involved. So biographies of all the French VIPs are given. And through that, some of the history of France is also reviewed, specifically the pre-war history and some of the war during the war history, the history that what occurred, the events that occurred during the World War II, the early years of the World War II. Specifically, it also provides the background of the German commanders of that were commanding the Austrian resistance members at the castle either, and why they became the resistance members, what made them disillusioned about the Nazi government and Germany overall, and also provides the background of the American commander. So it's pretty good. It's pretty well written in that case. There's also actually a biography is given of two prisoners who were at the castle leader, who were from Dachau and were acting as servants. Overall, description of the battle is pretty well done. It's pretty detailed. It's easy enough to understand what's happening and what occurred and how the battle was playing out. And overall, the events that occurred in Austria at the time are also very well described. There's plenty of footnotes that provide the backgrounds and the sources that are used to get that information, and also the footnotes expand on explaining different military formations, explaining different weapons, or just providing more information for people who want to know a bit of that or who are not familiar with some of the terminology or some of the people that are mentioned in the book. In conclusion, I would say that this is a good book for people who are interested in World War II history and who have some knowledge of World War II history. For everybody else, well, this is not a must-read book, but it's not going to be a book that they will regret reading at the same time, right? It will be a book that it's like, okay, that's interesting, that's an interesting episode, okay, that's good, and that's all there is to it for anybody else, except the World War II historians who will find this pretty interesting. And of course, the sources that the author uses also it would be of an interest to anybody who is a World War II historian to kind of look into and learn about the Austrian resistance or about the different members of the French government and their views on exactly who caused and who was to blame for the French defeat during World War II. Now, as many people pointed out, and I also would like to point out, this book would be a great basis for a historical film. And I believe that there's a company actually out there that is trying to make this happen. Alright, so thank you for watching and listening to this non-fiction book report on The Last Battle by Stephen Harding.